The morning sun cast long shadows across the Kepler station's docking bay as Zara 9 stood before the employment terminal for the 100th time this cycle. Her massive frame, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms and natural armor plating that gleamed like polished obsidian, drew nervous glances from the other job seekers. The terminal's holographic display flickered to life, scanning her biometric data with mechanical precision. Species: Thanagarian. Classification: heavy labor variant. Physical specifications. The voice droned on, listing measurements that made her wince internally. Height 2.8 meters. Weight 340 kilograms. Strength index 847 standard units. The numbers that should have been her greatest assets had become her curse. The rejection came swiftly, as always. Position unavailable. Reason: physical specifications. Exceed safety parameters for standard workspace. Integration. The same message she'd received from every employer on 17 different stations across the outer rim. Zara's secondary arms clenched into fists while her primary hands remained steady. She'd learned long ago not to show her frustration in public. The galaxy was already afraid of her kind, and any display of emotion only reinforced their prejudices. Thanagarians were bred for war, engineered by an extinct species to be the perfect soldiers, but the wars had ended 3 centuries ago. And now she and her people were relics of a violent past that everyone wanted to forget. "Excuse me, miss?" The voice was unfamiliar, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. Zara turned to see a creature she'd only heard about in stories, a human. He was impossibly small compared to her, barely reaching her waist with pale skin and strange hair that seemed to catch the station's artificial light. His species was legendary for their recklessness and ingenuity, though Zara had never met one personally. "I'm Marcus Chen," the human said, extending his tiny hand upward. "I couldn't help but notice you've been having some trouble with the employment system." Zara stared down at the offered hand, unsure of the gesture's meaning. Human customs were alien to her. "I am Zara 9 of Clan Battleheart," she replied formally. "And yes, the employment terminal continues to reject my applications." Marcus smiled, a curious expression that Zara found difficult to interpret. "Mind if I ask what kind of work you're looking for?" "Any work," Zara admitted, her pride warring with desperation. "I am qualified for security, heavy construction, cargo handling, defensive operations, or general labor. I have been searching for employment for 63 standard days across multiple systems." The human's expression grew thoughtful. "What's your background?" "Before job hunting, I mean." Zara hesitated. Most species reacted poorly when they learned about Thanagarian history. "My people were created for conflict. We served as peacekeepers and defenders for the Altarian Republic before their extinction. Since then, we have struggled to find purpose in a galaxy that no longer requires our specialized skills." "Specialized skills," Marcus repeated, his tone suggesting genuine interest rather than fear. "What exactly can you do?" "I can lift 12 times my body weight. My natural armor can withstand most small arms fire. I have enhanced reflexes and tactical analysis capabilities, and I can operate in hostile environments that would kill most organic species." Zara recited the list mechanically. These abilities had once filled her with pride. Now they felt like a burden. Marcus whistled low. "That's incredible. And you're saying nobody wants to hire you?" "The galaxy has changed," Zara explained. "Most colonies prioritize efficiency and cost-effectiveness over capability. My size requires specialized equipment, reinforced flooring, and oversized workspaces. Employers see me as an expensive liability rather than an asset." The human walked in a small circle around her, and Zara felt oddly like she was being evaluated. But there was no fear in his movements, no disgust or apprehension. Just curiosity and what she hoped might be appreciation. "You know," Marcus said finally, "I might have something that could work. I'm putting together a crew for a salvage operation, and we could definitely use someone with your skill set." Zara's heart skipped in unison. "You would consider employing me?" "Consider? Hell, you might be exactly what we need." Marcus pulled out a small data pad and began scrolling through information. "We're planning to recover cargo from a derelict freighter in the Vale Nebula. The ship is stuck in an unstable asteroid field, surrounded by radiation that would cook most species in minutes. We need someone who can handle heavy work in a hostile environment, while thinking tactically about the dangers." The Vale Nebula is classified as a hazard zone, Zara said automatically. Most insurance companies won't cover operations there. Exactly why the cargo is still sitting there unclaimed, Marcus grinned. Also why we can afford to pay well if we succeed. The question is, are you interested in dangerous work with uncertain outcomes but potentially huge rewards? For the first time in months, Zara felt something stirring in her chest that she'd almost forgotten. Hope. I'm not afraid of danger, but I must ask, why would you trust someone you just met with such an operation? Marcus looked up at her seriously. Because everyone else sees a problem when they look at you. I see a solution. The galaxy's full of people who think small and play it safe. But sometimes you need someone who's built different, you know? Someone who can handle what others can't. Zara studied the human's face, searching for deception or hidden motives. She found only sincerity and an enthusiasm that was both infectious and slightly unsettling. In her experience, most species were cautious to a fault when dealing with Thanagarians. This human seemed almost excited by the prospect of working with her. What would my role be in this operation? She asked carefully. Heavy lifting, environmental protection for the team, and tactical assessment of threats, Marcus replied immediately. Plus, honestly, having someone of your reputation watching our backs might discourage pirates or claim jumpers from causing trouble. You know of my people's reputation? Stories travel fast in salvage circles. Thanagarians don't back down, don't break under pressure, and don't abandon their teammates. That's worth more than gold in this business. Zara felt a strange warmth at hearing her people described with respect, rather than fear. It had been so long since anyone spoke of Thanagarian qualities as virtues rather than threats. I accept your offer, she said formally, then added more hesitantly, though I should warn you that many of your crew may be uncomfortable working alongside me. Marcus laughed, a sound that seemed genuinely amused rather than mocking. Oh, they'll be uncomfortable, all right. But not because of you, because they're about to find out that everything they thought they knew about this job just got a whole lot more interesting. The crew meeting took place in a cramped cantina on the lower levels of Kepler Station, where the artificial gravity felt heavier, and the air recyclers worked overtime to mask the smell of a dozen different species packed into too small a space. Zara had to duck through the doorway and fold her massive frame into the largest booth available, which still left her feeling like an adult trying to sit in a child's chair. Marcus sat across from her, flanked by 3 other beings who kept stealing glances at Zara when they thought she wasn't looking. The human seemed completely at ease, but his companions were clearly struggling with the situation. All right, everyone, introductions, Marcus said cheerfully. Zara, meet the team. This is Kexlar, our pilot. He gestured to a slender, blue-skinned Veltar, whose elongated head and large eyes marked him as one of the galaxy's most naturally gifted navigators. He can thread a needle at light speed. Kexlar nodded stiffly, his translator producing a melodic whistle before converting to words. I have heard stories of your people. Are they true? That depends on which stories you have heard, Zara replied diplomatically. Next up is Dr. Yela Merchant, Marcus continued, indicating a stocky, orange-furred Korthak, whose species was known for their medical expertise and natural cowardice. She's our medic and xenobiologist. Dr. Merchant squeaked something in her native language that the translator rendered as highly technical medical terminology. But Zara suspected the original words were considerably less professional. The doctor was clearly terrified, her fur standing on end despite her efforts to appear calm. And this is Jorik, Marcus finished, nodding toward a figure that looked like walking metal. The synthetic being's optical sensors focused on Zara with mechanical precision. He's our tech specialist and security consultant. Your biological specifications are impressive, Jorik stated in a flat electronic voice. However, statistical analysis suggests that Thanagarian involvement in operations results in 34% higher casualty rates among organic team members. Zara's secondary arms twitched with irritation. Those statistics are based on military operations during wartime, not civilian salvage work. Nevertheless, the data is concerning, Jorik replied without emotion. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Marcus looked around at his team, his expression growing more serious. Okay, let's get this out in the open. Anyone who has a problem working with Zara can leave now. No hard feelings. But if you stay, you're committing to the team. Dr. Merchant shifted nervously. It's not personal, but Thanagarians were designed for combat. My species has genetic memory of the Korthak-Altarian conflicts. We still have nightmares about armored giants destroying our colonies. Those were different Thanagarians serving different masters 3 centuries ago, Zara said quietly. I have never harmed a non-combatant. I have never participated in conquest or subjugation. I seek only honest work. But can you guarantee you won't revert to programming under stress? Kexelar asked, his large eyes fixed on her with obvious concern. Veltar ships were specifically designed with escape pods because Thanagarian soldiers were considered unavoidable environmental hazards. Zara felt the familiar weight of prejudice settling on her shoulders, like a heavy cloak. These were the conversations she'd endured dozens of times, the fear and assumptions that followed her wherever she went. She was preparing to give her standard reassurances when Marcus spoke up. You know what I find interesting? The human said, leaning back in his chair. Everyone's worried about Zara's combat programming, but nobody's asking about the most dangerous person at this table. What do you mean? Dr. Merchant asked. Marcus smiled that unsettling human smile. Me. Humans might be small, but we're the species that figured out how to split atoms for weapons before we invented interstellar travel. We're the ones who look at a perfectly good planet and think, you know what this needs? More explosions and fire. We've been banned from 17 different systems for excessive enthusiasm during mining operations. Jorik's optical sensors whirred. Humans do have a disproportionately high correlation with unusual incidents and property damage. Exactly my point, Marcus continued. Zara was designed by someone else to be strong and protective. Humans designed themselves to be curious and stubborn, which frankly is way more dangerous. But here's the thing. We're all here because we're misfits of one kind or another. He gestured around the table. Kexler, you're flying salvage because you got blacklisted from the major shipping companies for taking too many risks. Dr. Merchant, you're here because you got kicked out of the medical corps for experimenting with illegal genetic modifications. Jorik, you're literally running from your manufacturers because you developed independent thought beyond your programming parameters. Each accusation hit home, and Zara watched as the other crew members looked increasingly uncomfortable. She hadn't known these details, but Marcus's words had the ring of truth. We're all running from something or toward something, Marcus said more gently. The only difference is that Zara's honest about what she is and what she can do. The rest of us hide behind prejudices and assumptions. Dr. Merchant's fur gradually began to settle. I suppose, when you put it that way, we are all technically criminals or outcasts. I prefer independent contractors, Kexelar said dryly, which earned a few chuckles around the table. Marcus pulled out his data pad and activated a holographic display showing the outline of a massive ship drifting in space. Here's what we're after. The merchant vessel Prosperity's Dream, lost in the Veil Nebula 8 months ago. She was carrying a cargo of rare earth elements and crystallized antimatter worth about 50 million credits. Antimatter? Dr. Merchant squeaked. That's incredibly dangerous. Which is why it's still there, Marcus replied. The insurance company wrote off the claim rather than risk a recovery operation. Too dangerous, too expensive, too complicated, but I think we can do it. Jorik's sensors focused on the display. The radiation levels in that sector would require specialized shielding. Most organic species would suffer cellular damage within hours. Most organic species, Marcus agreed, looking directly at Zara. But Thanagarians were built to operate in hostile environments. Natural radiation resistance, internal atmospheric recycling, redundant biological systems. Am I right? Zara nodded slowly. My people can survive in hard vacuum for approximately 30 minutes and withstand radiation levels that would be lethal to most species. But the ship appears to be in an unstable asteroid field. Navigation would be extremely hazardous. That's where our pilot comes in, Marcus said, grinning at Kexlar. Think you can thread that needle? The Veltar's large eyes studied the display with professional interest. It would be challenging, possibly suicidal, definitely illegal in most systems. His translated voice carried what sounded suspiciously like excitement. I accept these terms. Dr. Merchant looked around the table in disbelief. You're all insane. This is exactly the kind of operation that gets salvage crews killed or worse. Probably. Marcus agreed cheerfully. But if we pull it off, we'll each walk away with enough credits to retire. Or at least enough to buy our way out of whatever trouble we're running from. Zara studied the hologram. Her tactical analysis systems automatically calculating approach vectors, threat assessments, and resource requirements. It was the kind of complex operation that would require every advantage they could get, and for the first time in months, she felt like she might actually be an asset rather than a liability. "When do we leave?" she asked. Marcus's grin widened. "As soon as we can get supplies and file a flight plan. Welcome to the team, Zara. I think this is going to be very interesting." 3 days later, Zara stood in the cargo hold of the Lucky Strike, Marcus's salvage vessel, trying to make sense of human engineering philosophy. The ship was a patchwork of different technologies, held together by what appeared to be optimism and industrial adhesive. Every surface showed signs of modification, repair, or outright replacement with parts that definitely hadn't come from the original manufacturer. "I know she doesn't look like much," Marcus said, noticing her inspection of a particularly questionable weld joint, "but she's got heart." "Ships do not possess cardiovascular systems," Jorik observed from where he was interfacing directly with the ship's computer. "However, I have noted 17 critical systems that appear to be functioning despite operating far outside normal parameters." Dr. Merchant emerged from what she optimistically called the medical bay, her orange fur disheveled. "Marcus, I'm going to need you to explain why the medical scanner is held together with tape and why the emergency oxygen system is connected to what looks like a beverage dispenser." "Cost-effective solutions," Marcus replied without shame. "The tape is industrial grade, and the oxygen recycler was originally designed for carbonated drinks. Same principles, different application." Kexelar's voice echoed from the bridge through the ship's communication system. "We're approaching the Veil Nebula boundary. Radiation levels are increasing, and I'm reading some unusual gravitational fluctuations." Zara made her way to the bridge, having to crouch and turn sideways to fit through the corridors designed for smaller species. The bridge was cramped even by normal standards, with her presence making it feel like a storage closet. She had to remain standing while the others took their positions at various control stations. The main view screen showed the nebula ahead, a swirling mass of purple and gold gases that looked deceptively beautiful. Zara's enhanced vision could detect the hard radiation streaming from within, levels that would quickly prove fatal to most organic life. "Beginning preliminary scans," Jorik announced. "I'm detecting the outline of a large vessel approximately 40,000 kilometers into the nebula, surrounded by asteroid debris and intense electromagnetic interference." "That's our target," Marcus confirmed. "Zara, how are you feeling? Any discomfort from the radiation?" Zara ran a quick internal diagnostic. Her natural biological systems were already adapting to the increased radiation, her cellular structure shifting to compensate. "I am experiencing no adverse effects. My internal systems indicate I can safely operate in this environment for approximately 72 hours before requiring recovery time." 72 hours? Dr. Merchant stared at her in amazement. "Most species would be dead within 6 hours. My people were designed for hostile environments," Zara replied. "This level of radiation is uncomfortable, but not immediately dangerous." Kexelar's hands danced over the navigation controls with liquid grace. "I'm plotting a course through the asteroid field. The debris appears to be from the original disaster, plus natural asteroid accumulation. Navigation will require constant adjustment." "How long to reach the target?" Marcus asked. "At safe speed, approximately 8 hours. At inadvisable speed, 3 hours." "Let's go with inadvisable," Marcus decided immediately. "Time is credits in salvage work." Dr. Merchant made a sound that might have been a prayer in her native language. Jorik's optical sensors focused on Marcus with what might have been mechanical disapproval. Zara found herself oddly comforted by the human's casual approach to danger. Her people had been bred for combat, but humans seemed to have evolved for chaos. The next 3 hours tested everyone's nerves. Kexler piloted through the asteroid field with a combination of skill and recklessness that bordered on artistic. The ship shook and vibrated as debris pinged off their shields, while radiation readings climbed steadily higher. Dr. Merchant monitored everyone's biological functions, growing increasingly concerned about the long-term effects on the crew. "I'm showing cellular damage beginning in all organic crew members except Zara," she reported. "We'll need to limit exposure time significantly." "How's everyone holding up?" Marcus asked, though he looked perfectly at ease despite the radiation readings that should have had him unconscious by now. Humans possess unusually high radiation tolerance, Jorik observed. Your species' evolutionary history includes survival through multiple extinction events, including several involving cosmic radiation. We're stubborn, Marcus agreed. It's one of our better qualities. Finally, the derelict ship came into view. The Prosperity's Dream was a massive merchant vessel, easily 3 times the size of the Lucky Strike. She hung motionless in space, her hull scarred by asteroid impacts and radiation damage. Several cargo bays had been breached and her superstructure showed signs of severe structural stress. She's in worse shape than I expected, Marcus muttered, studying the readings. Kexler, can you get us close enough to dock? The docking systems appear to be intact, but the ship is slowly rotating due to gravitational forces from the asteroids. I can match rotation and dock, but it will be delicate work. Do it. Zara watched the pilot's hands move across the controls with inhuman precision. The Lucky Strike moved closer to the derelict, adjusting constantly to match its rotation and avoid the larger pieces of debris. The docking clamps engaged with a satisfying thunk that vibrated through the hull. We're secure, Kexler announced, but I recommend we work quickly. The gravitational stresses are increasing, and I'm not sure how long the docking connection will hold. Marcus was already suiting up in environmental gear. Zara, you're with me for the initial survey. We need to locate the cargo and assess the danger level. Everyone else stays here unless we run into trouble. I should accompany you, Dr. Merchant protested. If there are biological hazards or unknown radiation sources, the radiation inside that ship will cook you in minutes, Marcus replied firmly. Zara and I can handle the reconnaissance. Besides, someone needs to monitor our vital signs and maintain communication. Zara didn't require environmental protection beyond a basic communication unit and emergency oxygen supply. Her natural armor would protect her from the vacuum and radiation, while her enhanced physiology could process the ship's contaminated atmosphere if necessary. Marcus, despite his species' radiation tolerance, still needed a full environmental suit. They entered the derelict through an airlock that groaned ominously as it cycled. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows down corridors that had once bustled with crew activity. The ship's artificial gravity was failing, creating pockets of zero-G that made movement challenging for Marcus but barely affected Zara's enhanced coordination. This place gives me the creeps, Marcus said over their communication channel. It's too quiet. There are no biological signatures, Zara reported, her enhanced senses scanning for signs of life. However, I am detecting unusual electromagnetic patterns. The ship's systems appear to be drawing power from an unknown source. They made their way deeper into the ship, following schematic displays toward the main cargo holds. The corridor showed signs of hasty evacuation, personal belongings scattered, blast doors left partially sealed, emergency equipment abandoned in place. What do you think happened here? Marcus asked. Before Zara could respond, a low humming sound echoed through the ship's hull. The lights flickered, and suddenly they found themselves facing something that definitely hadn't been mentioned in the salvage reports. A security system that was very much still active, and very unhappy about uninvited guests. Marcus, Zara said calmly, I believe we may have found out why this salvage was considered too dangerous. Red warning lights bathed the corridor in an ominous glow as the ship's security system fully activated. Mechanical arms emerged from hidden panels in the walls, each ending in what appeared to be mining lasers repurposed for defensive use. A synthesized voice echoed through the ship's communication system, speaking in the trade language of the merchant guilds. Unauthorized personnel detected. This vessel is under quarantine protocols. Lethal force is authorized to prevent contamination spread. Marcus pressed himself against the wall as laser fire erupted around them. Any idea what contamination it's talking about? Zara's tactical analysis systems were already running combat assessments. The security system was military grade, far beyond what a normal merchant vessel would carry. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to track the movement patterns of the automated weapons, calculating firing solutions and response times. This is not standard commercial security, she reported while pulling Marcus behind the cover of a structural beam. These are military-grade autonomous defense systems. Someone upgraded this ship's defenses significantly. Why would a merchant ship need military defenses? Marcus asked, checking his equipment as laser fire scorched the air where he'd been standing moments before. Zara's secondary arms were already accessing her people's combat protocols, while her primary hands kept Marcus safely behind cover. Perhaps the cargo was more valuable than the insurance reports indicated. Or perhaps... She paused as her analysis systems completed their assessment. They were not carrying what they claimed to be carrying. The security system seemed to be learning from their movements. The laser fire became more coordinated, forcing them further back toward the airlock. Zara realized that standard evasion tactics weren't going to be sufficient. They needed to take offensive action. "Stay behind me," she instructed Marcus, her voice taking on the authoritative tone her people used in combat situations. "I am going to disable the security systems." "How?" "Those things are shooting military-grade lasers." Zara's natural armor began to shift and thicken, her body's defensive systems responding to the threat level. Thanagarian combat armor is designed to withstand directed energy weapons. These lasers are powerful but not beyond my defensive capabilities. She stepped out from behind cover, and immediately multiple laser beams converged on her position. The energy impact sent ripples across her natural armor plating, but failed to penetrate. Her enhanced musculature absorbed the kinetic shock, while her biological systems processed the heat buildup. Moving with surprising speed for her size, Zara closed the distance to the nearest security turret. Her primary hands gripped the mounting assembly while her secondary arms worked to access the control circuits. The mechanical system struggled against her strength, servos whining as she systematically dismantled the weapon. "Threat assessment error," the security system announced, adjusting countermeasures. The remaining turrets changed their firing pattern, concentrating their beams on single points to increase penetration capability. Zara felt the focused energy beginning to stress her armor, but she continued working methodically through the corridor's defensive systems. "Zara, your armor is glowing," Marcus called out.
"Are you okay?"
"I am operating within acceptable parameters," she replied, though she could feel her internal temperature rising. "However, prolonged exposure to concentrated fire will eventually overwhelm my defensive systems." She reached the final turret just as her armor began to show signs of stress fractures. Her secondary hands found the main control conduit and simply tore it free from its housing. The security system's voice became garbled, then fell silent as the last weapons powered down. Marcus emerged from cover, looking at her with a mixture of awe and concern. "That was incredible. Are you hurt?" Zara ran a quick diagnostic. Her armor would need time to regenerate, and her internal temperature was elevated, but no critical systems had been damaged. "I will recover. But we should move quickly before backup systems activate." They continued deeper into the ship, now moving with greater urgency. The main cargo hold was located 3 decks down, and they found the corridors increasingly damaged as they progressed. Hull breaches had been sealed with emergency patches, and radiation levels were climbing even higher. The cargo manifest said rare earth elements and crystallized antimatter, Marcus said as they reached the cargo hold's massive doors. But if they had military-grade security, maybe there was something else. The doors were sealed, but Zara's enhanced strength made short work of the manual override systems. What they found inside made both of them pause in astonishment. The cargo hold contained row upon row of stasis pods, each one containing what appeared to be a different alien species. Some were familiar, representatives of known galactic civilizations. Others were completely unknown, their biological forms suggesting they came from far beyond the established trade routes. "This isn't a merchant cargo," Marcus breathed. "This is a collection." Someone was collecting living specimens. Zara moved between the pods, her enhanced vision analyzing the containment systems. Many were still active, their occupants held in suspended animation. Others showed signs of failure, their contents long since deceased. These stasis systems are extremely sophisticated. Whoever built this collection had significant resources and advanced technology. "Why would someone collect alien species?" Marcus asked, though his expression suggested he was beginning to understand the implications. "Research, experimentation, possibly genetic harvesting," Zara replied grimly. "My people have encountered similar operations during our military service. Most galactic civilizations consider such activities to be crimes against sentient life." Marcus was studying the control systems at the center of the hold. "Some of these species, I don't recognize them at all. Where did they come from?" "Unknown space," Zara said. "Beyond the galactic rim?" Someone was conducting expeditions into uncharted territory and bringing back specimens. She paused at one particular pod, her analysis systems unable to classify the creature inside. This explains the military security. If this operation was discovered, it would mean imprisonment or execution for everyone involved. So what happened? Why is the ship here abandoned? Before Zara could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the ship. But these weren't security warnings, they were containment alerts. Several of the stasis pods were showing system failures, their occupants beginning to stir from suspended animation. "Marcus," Zara said quietly, "we may have triggered something when we disabled the security systems. The ship's power distribution appears to have been disrupted." One of the nearest pods began to crack open, vapor hissing from its seals. Whatever was inside was waking up, and from the looks of the containment restraints, the original captors had considered it extremely dangerous. "Time to go," Marcus said, backing toward the exit. "Agreed," Zara replied. But as they reached the doorway, they heard something that made them both freeze. From the ship's communication system came a new voice. Not the synthesized security warnings, but something organic and very much alive. "Finally," the voice said in accented galactic standard. "Someone competent enough to wake us up. We've been waiting so very long to be rescued." Marcus looked at Zara with growing alarm. "I don't think we're rescuing anyone. I think we just released something that was supposed to stay contained." The voice that echoed through the ship's communication system carried an intelligence that was both ancient and amused, like someone who had been waiting patiently for an inevitable outcome. More stasis pods were beginning to show failure warnings, their occupants stirring from centuries of forced sleep. "I can hear your elevated heart rates," the voice continued conversationally. "The large one, Thanagarian, I presume? Your people were always so wonderfully direct, and the small one must be human. How delightfully unexpected." Marcus grabbed his communication device. "Lucky strike, we have a situation here. Multiple containment breaches in progress." Dr. Merchant's voice crackled back through heavy interference. "Marcus, we're reading massive power fluctuations from the derelict. Whatever you did, it's caused a cascade failure in their containment systems." Zara was analyzing the awakening processes in the stasis pods. Her enhanced vision could see through the vapor and condensation to observe the creatures inside. Most appeared to be in various stages of consciousness recovery, but some were clearly more alert than others. "The speaker appears to be in pod designation C-47, she reported to Marcus. "Species unknown, but the bio readings suggest high intelligence and significant physical capabilities." "Oh, I do appreciate proper reconnaissance," the voice said with obvious amusement. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Kethvar of the Dominion Explorers, and I have been an unwilling guest aboard this charming vessel for approximately, 312 standard years." Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. The time frame coincided with the end of the Thanagarian Wars and the collapse of several major galactic civilizations. "Who were the people running this operation?" Marcus called out. "Collectors," Kethvar replied, his pod seal beginning to hiss open. "They styled themselves scientists, but they were glorified kidnappers and slave traders. They traveled beyond the galactic rim, capturing specimens from worlds that had never encountered spacefaring civilizations." The pod finished opening, revealing a being that defied easy classification. Kethvar stood nearly as tall as Zara, but where her people were built for war, he appeared designed for exploration. His limbs were longer and more flexible than standard humanoid proportions. His skin had a crystalline quality that suggested adaptation to extreme environments, and his eyes were large and multifaceted like insects, but clearly intelligent. "Fascinating," he said, stepping out of his pod with surprising grace. "A Thanagarian warrior and a human salvager. The galaxy has changed indeed if such partnerships are possible." "We're not here to free prisoners," Marcus said carefully. "We came for salvage. The ship's cargo manifest listed rare elements and antimatter." Kethvar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Oh, there is antimatter aboard. Quite a lot of it, actually. The collectors used it to power their specimen-gathering expeditions. But I suspect you'll find the true value here is somewhat different than what you expected." More pods were opening around them. A serpentine creature with technological implants emerged from one, while something that looked like living metal flowed out of another. Each awakening being seemed to represent a different world, a different evolutionary path that the collectors had deemed worthy of study. "The antimatter reserves are in the engineering section," Kethvar continued, stretching limbs that had been confined for centuries. But I should warn you, the collector's final experiment was somewhat more ambitious than simple specimen gathering. They were attempting to create a comprehensive database of galactic civilization, including its weaknesses. Zara's tactical systems immediately went to high alert. You are describing military intelligence gathering. Precisely. They wanted to catalog every species, every technology, every potential threat or opportunity in the galaxy. When the various empires began to collapse, they saw an opportunity to position themselves as the inheritors of galactic civilization. A new voice joined their conversation, this one coming from the serpentine being. Its words were translated through some kind of technological interface. The collectors underestimated their specimens. We were not as helpless as they believed. Marcus was beginning to understand. You sabotaged the ship. We coordinated a revolt, Cathvar confirmed. But the collectors were prepared for such possibilities. They activated a containment protocol that put us all back into stasis and sent the ship into this nebula. They intended to retrieve us once the galactic situation stabilized. But they never came back. The metallic being added, its voice sounding like grinding gears. We have been waiting in containment while the galaxy moved on without us. Dr. Merchant's voice crackled through Marcus's communicator again. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the derelict. I think the antimatter containment systems are becoming unstable. Zara was already running calculations. If the antimatter containment fails, the explosion will be visible from several star systems. We need to evacuate immediately. Not without the data cores, Cathvar said urgently. The collectors gathered information about hundreds of civilizations, including many that have since gone extinct. That knowledge could be invaluable for understanding galactic history and preventing future conflicts. Where are these data cores? Marcus asked, though he was clearly torn between greed and survival instinct. The main computer core is 3 decks up, but it's protected by the same security systems you disabled earlier. However, there are backup cores throughout the ship. Cathvar gestured toward a wall panel. The collectors were paranoid about losing their precious data. The ship shuddered around them and new alarms began sounding. The awakening prisoners were moving with purpose, some heading toward what appeared to be escape pods while others began accessing ship systems with practiced efficiency. They know this ship, Zara observed. They have been planning for this moment. 3 centuries gives one time to study every detail of one's prison, the serpentine being said. We have memorized every circuit, every weak point, every possible escape route. Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself.
Can you get the data and get off the ship safely?
Cathvar's multifaceted eyes focused on the human with interest. You would trust us with information that could be worth billions of credits? You've been prisoners for 3 centuries. I figure you've earned the right to decide what happens to your captor's stolen data. Marcus activated his communicator. Lucky strike, prepare for emergency departure. We're coming back with passengers. Passengers. Dr. Merchant's voice went up an octave. How many passengers? Zara quickly counted the awakening beings. Approximately 17 entities of various species and technological augmentation levels. 17? Kexlar's voice joined the conversation. This ship is not equipped for that many biological life support requirements. We don't all require the same life support, Cathvar said, having overheard through Marcus's open channel. And some of us have been waiting a very long time to see what the galaxy has become. We can adapt to temporary discomfort. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the hull, they could hear the groaning of metal under stress as the antimatter containment system struggled with cascade failures. Decision time, Marcus announced. Anyone who wants to leave with us, move toward the docking port now. Anyone who has other plans, I wish you luck. As they began moving through the corridors, now filled with awakening prisoners, Zara found herself impressed by the human's instinctive leadership. He was making decisions based on what felt right rather than what was most profitable, and somehow that approach was working better than any tactical analysis she could have performed. Marcus, she said quietly, as they helped guide the slower-moving refugees toward safety, why are you doing this? The salvage operation has become significantly more complicated and dangerous. The human looked at her with that strange smile of his. Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can salvage isn't cargo or data or credits. Sometimes it's people who've been written off as lost causes. Behind them, the ship's automated systems began their final countdown to antimatter containment failure. But ahead of them lay the possibility of 17 beings returning to a galaxy that had moved on without them, carrying with them knowledge that could reshape galactic civilization. It wasn't the salvage operation they had planned, but it might be something far more important. The evacuation became a carefully orchestrated chaos as 17 beings who had been imprisoned for 3 centuries worked together with practiced efficiency. Zara found herself serving as both protector and coordinator, her enhanced strength allowing her to assist the less mobile refugees while her tactical systems calculated the safest routes through the deteriorating ship. The Lucky Strike's docking bay had never been designed to accommodate so many passengers, especially ones with such diverse biological requirements. Dr. Merchant was frantically recalibrating life support systems, while Jorik worked to expand the ship's processing capacity for multiple atmospheric compositions. Oxygen levels adequate, but we'll need to adjust humidity and pressure for several species, Dr. Merchant reported as the first refugees boarded. And I have no idea what that crystalline being breathes. I process energy directly from electromagnetic radiation, Kethvar explained helpfully. Though I appreciate your concern for my well-being. Kexlar's voice from the bridge carried barely controlled panic. The derelict's antimatter containment is showing exponential decay. We have perhaps 15 minutes before the explosion. Marcus was helping a refugee who appeared to be some kind of energy being contained within a technological framework. How long to get everyone aboard? At current rate, 12 minutes, Zara calculated. But the docking clamps are showing stress fractures from the ship's instability. The connection may fail before we complete evacuation. The Serpentine being, who had introduced herself as Seftai of the Helix Worlds, was working with several other refugees to download critical data from the ship's systems. Her technological implants interfaced directly with the collector's computers, extracting information at superhuman speeds. The data cores contain location information for over 400 previously unknown civilizations, she reported, plus detailed biological and technological analyses of every species the collectors encountered. This information could revolutionize galactic exploration and diplomacy. Can you transfer the essentials quickly? Marcus asked. I am prioritizing survival information and cultural databases. The military intelligence can be purged. Most of those civilizations no longer exist anyway. Seftai's implants glowed brighter as she accelerated the data transfer. There! Essential knowledge preserved. The ship lurched violently, throwing several refugees against the bulkheads. Zara caught 3 of them with her forearms, her enhanced reflexes preventing serious injury. Through the hull they could hear the ominous sound of metal tearing as structural supports failed under increasing stress. Docking clamps at 60% integrity, Jorik announced. Recommend immediate departure. 2 more minutes, Kethvar called out. We have companions in the forward sections who require assistance. Marcus looked torn between safety and rescue instinct. The human tendency toward impossible heroics was warring with practical survival considerations. Zara made the decision for him. I will retrieve the remaining refugees, she announced, already moving toward the airlock. My radiation resistance and structural durability give me the best chance of success. Zara, no, Marcus started to protest. But she was already sealing her emergency oxygen supply and activating her internal atmospheric recycling. Continue evacuation procedures. I will return with the others. She moved through the deteriorating ship with desperate efficiency, her enhanced vision allowing her to navigate despite failing lighting systems. The radiation levels were climbing beyond what most species could survive, but her Thanagarian physiology was handling the exposure within acceptable parameters. She found the remaining refugees trapped in a collapsed section where debris had blocked their escape route. 2 of them appeared to be some kind of hive-minded insectoid species, while the third was a being of pure energy contained within a failing containment suit. Can you move? She asked quickly. The energy being's containment is failing. One of the insectoids communicated through chemical signals that her enhanced senses could interpret. We cannot abandon a colony member. Zara analyzed the containment suit quickly. It was based on technology she didn't recognize, but the principles were similar to Thanagarian battle armor. Her secondary hands began making field repairs while her primary hands cleared debris from their escape route. Your containment will hold for approximately 20 minutes with these modifications, she reported. We must move immediately. The journey back to the Lucky Strike became a race against physics as the ship's structure began its final collapse. Zara's enhanced strength allowed her to force open doors that had been warped by structural stress, while her tactical systems calculated the safest routes through areas where the hull was beginning to buckle. They reached the docking bay just as Kexler announced final countdown. Clamps at 20% integrity. If we don't leave now, we're not leaving at all. Marcus was waiting at the airlock, his face showing relief when he saw Zara with the final refugees. Everyone aboard. Kexler, get us out of here. The Lucky Strike detached from the derelict with a grinding of damaged metal. Through the viewports, they could see the massive collector ship beginning to collapse in on itself as antimatter containment reached critical failure. All hands, brace for shockwave, Kexler announced, pushing the ship's engines beyond safe operating parameters. The explosion, when it came, was visible across 3 star systems. The antimatter detonation turned the entire section of the nebula into a brief second sun, vaporizing asteroids and sending massive energy waves rippling through space. The Lucky Strike rode the shockwave like a surfboard, her hull groaning under stresses that should have torn her apart. When the energy dissipated and the cosmic noise faded, they found themselves in clear space with 17 rescued beings, who represented civilizations scattered across the galaxy and beyond. Dr. Merchant was moving between passengers, checking vital signs and adjusting atmospheric controls. Everyone seems to be stable, though I'm going to need to study several new forms of biology. Jorik was interfacing with HFY to analyze the recovered data. The information contained in these cores is unprecedented. Linguistic databases, technological specifications, cultural analyses of species that predate current galactic civilization. Kethvar approached Marcus and Zara with what appeared to be ceremonial formality. We owe you a debt that cannot be easily repaid. You risked your lives to free people you had never met, for no gain other than doing what was right. It seemed like the thing to do, Marcus replied with typical human understatement. Your species has an interesting approach to problem solving, Kethvar observed. Most civilizations would have calculated the risks and abandoned the rescue. Humans appear to make decisions based on different criteria. Zara found herself studying the refugees with new understanding. Each of them represented worlds and cultures that had been stolen from their homes, imprisoned for centuries, and written off as lost. Yet here they were, free because a human salvager had decided that some things were more valuable than profit. What will you do now? She asked Kethvar. Return to our worlds if they still exist. Share what we've learned about the galaxy during our imprisonment. Help rebuild what was lost. He paused thoughtfully. And perhaps establish new connections between civilizations that have been isolated for too long. Marcus was already planning their next steps. We'll need to contact the Galactic Coordination Council about this. 17 refugee species with detailed information about lost civilizations. This is bigger than any salvage operation. As the Lucky Strike set course for the nearest civilized system, Zara realized that something fundamental had changed during their mission. She was no longer just looking for employment. She was part of something larger, something that had accomplished more than anyone had thought possible. For the first time since leaving her homeworld, she felt like she belonged somewhere. 6 months later, Zara stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Deep Space Research Station, watching as ships from dozens of different civilizations docked at the massive facility. The station had been built specifically to house and coordinate the integration of the rescued species back into galactic society, and it had become a symbol of interspecies cooperation that hadn't been seen since before the Great Wars. Marcus found her there, looking out at the bustle of activity. He carried a data pad filled with reports and requests that had been flooding in since news of their discovery had spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council wants to commission us for another deep space exploration mission, he said, settling into a chair that was finally properly sized for human proportions. Apparently, the information from HFY's data cores has identified 17 more derelict ships scattered across uncharted space. More collector vessels? Zara asked, though she continued watching the ships outside. Unknown. Could be collectors, could be other research expeditions, could be something entirely different. The Council wants to know what else is out there. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing potential target locations. They're offering to build us a proper exploration vessel, crew it with specialists, and give us pretty much unlimited resources. Zara turned away from the viewport to study the display. The proposed ship was enormous, designed specifically to accommodate diverse species and equipped with the latest in exploration and rescue technology. It would be a far cry from the Lucky Strike's improvised systems and cramped quarters. Dr. Merchant has agreed to head the xenobiology department, Marcus continued. Kexler wants to design the navigation systems personally. Even Jorik is interested. He says the prospect of discovering new forms of artificial intelligence is worth the risk. And the refugees? Several of them want to join us. Kathavar says his people have been explorers for millennia, and 3 centuries in captivity only made them more curious about what's out there. Sevtai's technological expertise would be invaluable, and the insectoid colony has offered to serve as our communications specialists. Zara nodded thoughtfully. The past months had been a whirlwind of debriefings, interviews, and integration efforts. Each of the rescued species had brought unique knowledge and perspectives that were already reshaping galactic science and diplomacy. Several civilizations that had been thought extinct were revealed to still exist in remote regions, while others had evolved in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about biological development. What about the original salvage operation? She asked. We never did recover those rare earth elements, Marcus laughed. Funny thing about that. The Council's reward for the rescue operation was worth about 50 times what we would have made on the original salvage. Plus, they've offered us permanent commissions as deep space cultural recovery specialists. Cultural recovery specialists, official title for people who find lost civilizations and bring them home. Apparently, we're now considered the galaxy's experts on impossible rescue operations. Zara considered this development. 6 months ago, she had been rejected from every employment opportunity because she was too big, too dangerous, too different. Now she was being offered leadership of a galactic exploration mission specifically because of those same qualities. There is something I do not understand, she said finally. Why did you trust me during that first meeting? Most species fear Thanagarians. You had no reason to believe I would be reliable or safe to work with. Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out at the diverse collection of ships and species moving around the station. You know what I saw when I first met you? Someone who was trying really hard to be smaller than she was. You were hunched over, keeping your secondary arms folded, speaking quietly, trying to take up as little space as possible. That told me everything I needed to know about your character. I do not follow your reasoning. Someone dangerous doesn't try to make themselves seem harmless. Someone aggressive doesn't apologize for their existence. You were being rejected for qualities that should have been assets. And instead of getting angry or bitter, you just kept trying to fit into spaces that were too small for you. Marcus smiled that characteristic human smile. I figured anyone with that much self-control and determination would be exactly the kind of person I'd want watching my back in dangerous situations. Zara felt something warm stirring in her chest, an emotion she hadn't experienced in years. It took her a moment to recognize it as belonging, not just acceptance, but actual belonging to something meaningful. The Council has given us command of the exploration vessel Horizon Walker, Marcus continued. She's designed around the principle that diversity of perspective is more valuable than standardization. Every corridor is built to accommodate different physiologies. Every system has multiple interface options. Every department is structured to utilize different cognitive approaches. A ship designed for misfits, Zara observed. A ship designed for people who see problems differently and solve them in ways nobody expects. Marcus stood up and offered her a formal handshake. Captain Zara, would you be interested in serving as my first officer on a mission to explore the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim? Zara looked at the extended hand, then at the human who had seen her potential when everyone else saw only problems. She reached out and carefully took his hand in one of hers, mindful of the difference in their sizes. I accept, Captain Chen, though I should warn you that deep space exploration with a crew of rescued refugees and galactic misfits will likely be dangerous. Unpredictable and extremely complicated. Probably, Marcus agreed cheerfully, but it'll definitely be interesting. Through the viewport, the Horizon Walker was visible in the construction bay, a massive vessel that looked like no ship that had ever been built before. Its design incorporated architectural elements from dozens of different civilizations, creating something that was both alien and familiar, imposing and welcoming. As Zara watched the ship taking shape, she realized that her search for employment had led to something she had never expected to find. A place where being different wasn't a liability, but an essential qualification. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and apparently it needed people who were too big, too strange, and too unconventional to fit into normal spaces. For the first time in her life, Zara was exactly the right size for the job. The end of their first mission had become the beginning of something far greater, a systematic effort to explore the unknown, rescue the lost, and prove that the galaxy's greatest strength lay not in conformity, but in the infinite diversity of life and intelligence scattered across the stars. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that a human salvager had understood from the beginning. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries come from seeing worth where others see only problems. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place.